first to begin with, we started this journey around 2019, and I guess why was it important? I mean, of the 68,000 odd people in the division, we've got about over 55,000 people in stores. And our unique proposition sort of is happy and healthy lives, which are enabled by that colleague journey. Omnichannel, of course, digital first, of course, but enabled by that colleague journey. And stores are really the centerpiece, and they were not very well connected, shall we say. And so over sort of 50,000 store colleagues across 7 countries who didn't really have a lot of connectivity. And I thought maybe sort of take 3 time views or lenses, like a pre-pandemic, and we were very lucky, we were well prepared. What we did during the pandemic, and obviously we were one of those retailers who had their stores open because we were pharmacies, and we participated, of course, in 3 of my countries in actually the vaccination effort. In some countries, like in Chile, in sort of 2 cycles. And then, of course, sort of post-pandemic, what are we doing with the new world? I share my experiences with you, and I'm looking forward to learning from you about what you think has sort of worked, not worked in your own organizations. And so pre-pandemic, we basically selected, so we did a large global deal with Microsoft. We selected Azure, and the very first sort of phase of the transformation was really focused on 2 pieces. There's workplace modernization, which I'm speaking to, and a sort of a large scale, sort of, if you like, migration to S/4HANA on sort of Azure, on sort of large instances. So basically dedicated hardware. And then we really sort of, the workplace transformation, the heart of it was Microsoft E5. And we wanted to make Teams the core collaboration platform, and implement success factors as the sort of the HCM tool set. So really, I mean, lots and lots of challenges, very large program, lots of colleagues working on it, made it happen. But really 2 key challenges. So one was obviously around user adoption that I sort of thought I'd focus today, and sort of the other around scaling service delivery. I mean, as you can understand, a very digitally conversant modern workforce, but adopting Teams within a corporate environment for stores was not an easy process. Adopting SAP SuccessFactors was a little bit harder. And obviously, suddenly we went from about X base of clients for our service delivery organization to, with sort of the shifts and schedules, about 3.5x. So obviously we weren't going to scale the service delivery organization like that. So we really sort of focused on this training and onboarding piece, and Walgreens had a lot of experience in this space with Walkme. So we took that template, used that template for both E5 and SuccessFactors. And the results really, you got to see them to believe them. Based on our any other sort of service introduction experience, there was a 50% reduction at the beginning, and we sort of quickly went to nearly a 70% reduction compared to traditional onboarding. Lovely colleague from the US who helped us set it all up, a lot of experience with Walkme, and I think, these adoption tools work particularly well in that kind of an environment. And then sort of really maybe not AI ops, but machine learning based ops was absolutely critical. So we were looking to switch 250 to 350 stores at a time. And we basically used MoveWorks to enable that interface between teams, triaging and the service delivery piece. And again, less than 1.5% of the tickets failed SLA. So we nearly had a sort of a 5.2, 5.3 times improvement of our normal experience in sort of, scaling this kind of service delivery. And then, of course, during the pandemic, and I think this is where really the investment came into its own. We all thought it would be a brilliant idea to do this. We were all committed to it for the reasons I mentioned before, but none of us realized how critical it would be at the time when the pandemic hit, and how it would enable us. So, I mean, I don't think we would have done it in several of the markets or participated to the extent that we did with the vaccination sort of exercise had we not been there with our sort of digital transformation program. So as I said, vaccination programs now in 4, originally in 3. We used the healthcare bot. Unlike the UK, lots of places where we had curbside service, and again, curbside service enabled by the bot framework. There were geographies and regulators where you could not even go into a pharmacy at places. And then, of course, the way the customers were enabled when they had symptoms, when they would typically come in to see a pharmacist, which they couldn't do now, and then connected on with any other telemedicine providers was another critical part of that value. And this is very much the journey we started going on as a corporation, building that local health hub around the pharmacy. Obviously, in the US, some sort of very strategic acquisitions to that end, really to compete with a purely digital model like the Amazons of the world. And then post-pandemic, so now Manhattan is our WMS. The WMS is connected. The mobile POS is connected to the colleague collaboration platform. 20% of the colleagues, and this, it's not just the E5 piece, but really success factors, are using hybrid working opportunities. So a lot of pieces in Chile, some click and collect being facilitated by people who are not in store. And we've seen significant improvements both in productivity and in engagement. And I think engagement is probably an important one to call out. I do some NED work with a couple of other businesses, and so I serve on the board of this business called Rebound Returns, which is an e-commerce returns platform, and it has ASOS and others as their customers. And everybody were telling us, whenever we spoke to them, oh, great improvement in productivity, but a tremendous decline in engagement. People don't talk to each other. They don't know what's happening. We certainly, and I think maybe the timing, maybe the fact that, we were able to do that communication job well, then we actually saw improvement in engagement. And obviously, within a pharmacy environment, you had lots of controls with coming back to work. And then our journey continues really in exploiting E5, in success factors, and the bots. We've now rolled out Covio on Elastic to help colleagues collaborate the sales process, try and understand when somebody is selling a particular thing, let's say, a skincare product, what would the basket compose of, where their colleagues are having success. And the colleague platform backlog, as a an indication of, I think, demand is a excellent indication of progress. And you can see over 200 epics right now in the platform backlog. And when we started, we had about 7. So from 2019, quite quite some progress, I would say. And as I was saying, really, I wanted to share this exercise that we did, and really hope that we would engage you, anybody who'd done colleague collaboration, and try and learn from you, or if you had any questions you had.
You mentioned E5 and success factors, something else. What are they? Are they applications?
So E5 is Office 365 E5. So Microsoft, E5. So E5 is just a license with its security. What else did I mention? SAP Success Factors is a human capital management solution from talent onboarding right on to, so we do scheduling on it too for store staff. MoveWorks is a sort of a piece of machine learning technology which integrates with Teams or any other collaboration environment that you have. So when you've got all of these people who are now trying to talk to your service desk, it does triage. So just imagine, like as I was saying, 50,000 from about sort of something like 6.5, 7,000, and a threefold increase because obviously not everybody is in store, there would be schedules. But even then, 3.5 times, you would have to scale the service organization 3.5 times, 4 times. We certainly didn't. And triage, learning, that whole piece. And then Walkme is a adoption technology. So it basically integrates with a complex application, let's say like SuccessFactors, where and the case study is actually on the internet if you're interested. This lovely lady, Laura, who basically led this process in the US, who helped us with it. So Walkme integrates with SuccessFactors, provides you messaging as a colleague is trying to do things. So let's say they log in and they want to do their, their schedules, or they want to book a holiday, or they want to split, a particular shift. They can go and do that, and it's sort of online, intermediated, very light touch sort of integration as a learning tool on the tool set, and it continuously reinforces that. So really those two pieces, if you think without something like Walkme, and I'm not in any way associated with Walkme bar as a customer through WBA, but without technology, and there are others, without a technology like that, adoption at that scale would have been very hard. I mean, we're talking about 50-odd thousand people who are learning to use these new systems, which they didn't use before. I mean, if you go back, when I first came to Walgreens, and obviously we've got Gus here who has been in Boots, I think, way longer than sort of I have, and he's probably forgotten things that I would never know. But, like our stores were reasonably digitized compared to other places. I mean, you had content in store which was running digitally, obviously all the pauses were digital, but you have so many, if you like, retail businesses. I did Odeon and UCI before we did, I did Walgreens, and there, of course, we had a sort of a back of the cinema, a set of charts where people's schedules were written down. People noted them down. Soon, as with the young crowd with cinema, people had created these Facebook sites to share schedules and swap them. There was no technology, and all of this is now intermediated through technology. So Walkme was really that adoption platform. MoveWorks took that load off the service desk. And I think, these are two interesting elements that I brought to the table today to sort of chat with you about. But so much of it was the communication, the transformation, coordination, if you like, with such a large program. And so much of it, I mean, that's why I wanted to mention the link with SAP and really moving to the cloud. So much of it was because of the structure of the program. I mean, with R3, we would have never run this kind of a scale of operation. So I mean, that was certainly sort of, in the many programs that I've done, I mean, and as we all succeed and fail, and sometimes we succeed better than we fail, or sometimes we fail worse than we succeed, whichever it might be. But I think, for all of us who were involved in the program, the impact that we saw from the program during the sort of the COVID sort of period was really heartening. I mean, so that's why I wanted to share it. But any other?
So in terms of that rollout, was that complete before the pandemic started, or did that continue through the pandemic?
So,
if so, what lessons did you, or are you learning in terms of that rollout? And how did that impact on the uptake with your own colleagues?
Yeah, so we were very fortunate, as I said, we'd actually rolled it out. So we started in 2019 in our sort of stores, we'd certainly rolled it out. The US were still doing some of it, and in fact, Laura speaks about sort of that in Walkme, and it was very challenging, obviously. I mean, the challenge being that for us, for our colleagues, obviously, and in several countries, I mean, Chile is an example, Mexico is an example. Obviously, you can understand populations which were so stressed. Often there was, I wouldn't call it sort of staff abuse, but there were very difficult situations. People came in for sort of, some kind of a hand sanitizer, other product, didn't find it, get upset. So we basically changed the structures of the stores, changed access, closed the beauty side of the stores, done a lot of stuff which meant that adoption of those tools were harder, like stuff were much more, some places we did curbside. But I mean, I don't have direct experience of it. In my market, certainly we'd already implemented the tool set, which was, I think, as I said, for us, that was the critical differentiator. In most countries, not just here, but in most countries where we participated in vaccination, there was at least 2 pieces of paper, if not more. And all of this was intermediated at the store by the colleague, primarily because they were now digitally enabled. I mean, you can imagine a situation where you would have to queue behind a point of sale to get there.
You said that Teams is your primary collaboration tool. How did you sort of manage that rollout? Because I've seen it rolled out really well in terms of control around creating channels. And at the beginning of the pandemic, a friend asked me to look at their work sort of Teams, and they've been added to like 87 different channels, by the colleagues. There's no control.
No, so it was very, very well structured. So introduction, as we introduced success factors, and the very first piece I think I had it on one of the slides we did was basically the scheduling piece, because people wanted access to schedule. So basically the only communication on the portal when you landed on the portal was around scheduling. There was a lot of pent-up desire to use it for other communication, store affairs, new products. But and one of the key pieces with that kind of a launch is you want focus. You want people to be able to learn to use the tools before they start to massively exploit it. And you always find in these kind of programs, sometimes ambition takes off and you would have 87 channels, but nobody uses one channel, and you basically sort of come down under the weight of your own, if you like, ambition rather than anything else. But no, so very, very structured. We did do store walking again because the US had done it with a supplier to try and assist, but Walkme was particularly good. I mean, when you see technology like that, you'll see all of those technologies are similar. If you make a number of, I wouldn't say mistakes, if you have a number of user errors or user difficulties, it would intercept and show you videos of how to do it. So it's really good. I mean, obviously good in the way it is implemented. And there are some pieces which were more complex, like shift swapping, where you were swapping a shift with another colleague, let us say. And there were some pieces which are particularly easy, which most people would work out, like, booking a holiday or that kind of thing, or picking up your pay slip and those pieces. So, any other questions?
Yeah, we've currently got an SAP, very old implementation of it. We're just looking now at the market to see what options we've got, whether we actually do make the move to SAP 4 or look at something else. I guess 2 questions. Number 1 is, in implementing something as big as that, it's more business transformation, organizational transformation and technology. How did you manage to do that alongside other big programs that you've probably got on at the same time? And secondly, if you could do this all again, what would the biggest lesson be that you learn and do different?
A brilliant question. So, I think the first part, I would say, this is where I had certainly never worked in, and I guess it's true with lots of my other colleagues, a business as big as Walgreens Boots before I joined it. And you see the beauty of scale, the program started under our last global CIO, and there was a gentleman charged with a team of over 75 people just doing the original scoping of the SAP. We have got some of the biggest SAP implementations. In my markets, they were quite small. In fact, if I'm not wrong, the US implementation is actually the biggest SAP implementation in the US. So a lot of planning went into it. But you asked a very good question, the learning that we had. I think the gentleman before here, Armis, he was talking about what percentage are you in the cloud and what's your ambition. So we had these 3 waves. The program was called Horizon. We had 3 waves of doing it. And the first wave, we were certainly early, though we were being told by suppliers, Accenture works quite closely with us. We were told by suppliers, oh, this has been done. We could do it. We were very early in terms of knowledge. As an example, moving to large instances, virtualized workloads was a major challenge. It was a technical challenge, if you like. And we used over 75 virtual machines, moved nearly 15 terabytes of data, had only 10 hours of downtime. But very quickly, and this is the beauty of, as I was telling you, the skill composition and structure and coordination of the program. You process and talent, I think, you cannot replace. We built these processes around sort of, expecting to fail, because obviously we quickly realized that the suppliers just did not have the quote unquote expertise that they were claiming. It was very new ground. So we built that into the plan. The biggest challenge, I would say, with the SAP side, because you were asking about it, was we again did 250, 300 odd stores. So we had sort of a hybrid operating model, and that was extremely hard to manage. We had resourced up for it, but that was extremely hard to manage. You ended up with, I don't know what kind of structure Boots has, but we have this area manager like structures in our markets, area manager stores, and we tried to include, an entire area within it. What we had not planned for is the whole purpose of doing the program obviously was the improvement in performance, which clearly showed in the way sort of, customer service worked in the store, there was better inventory, better service, faster queues. So there was a real perception by the customers that there were 2 operating models. You could see a lot of feedback coming on it. So and it's a very hard thing to manage, obviously, when you are, and it goes right the way through to our own operating models where, one part was DevOps and the other part was still operations managed sort of in a structure. I would say of the vendors, because obviously you're going through the selection process. I've done Navision before too. Of the vendors, I think SAP was by far the most well positioned in our vendor mix, not from comparing it with another ERP for this transformation. And I would say some of the large, so we use IBM and Dell EMC in my markets for hosting. Some of the hosting providers were the least prepared, though they did such a good talking game, they were the least prepared for it. Any?
You mentioned the box, the box.
Yeah.
What were they doing? What did they do?
So they uses the Microsoft technology to do this, and very simple. So as I was telling you, typically as we do here, if you have a minor ailment, you would walk into the store and you would say, I've got a fever, what should I take? Go take some paracetamol, off you go. And lots of these markets have more OTC products. It's on the pharmacy side of the market, over-the-counter products. But in this case, we didn't want them to come in, but we did want to hold that relationship with our consumers. So the bot actually walked you through your symptoms, pointed you to telemedicine providers locally. The US went a little further. As I was saying, we basically acquired a business called Village MD, which provides like a local GP service and connected with them. We didn't. In our marketplace, we were basically connecting with other providers, but we completed that ecosystem. So right from you being able to understand whether you were at risk of getting COVID, to what would you do with it, to if you needed any support from us, any medical sort of orders, how would you go about it? So, lots of the markets, as I was saying, you couldn't get into the store, you'd have to stop at the curb. So that whole process was intermediated by that bot. Very simple, sort of from a technology perspective, nothing overly smart, but a huge sort of, value piece for the consumers. And the reason it worked is because of the connectivity. So the colleagues at, the curbside fulfillment could have only worked if we digitally transformed the colleagues. Otherwise, you'd have to have a queuing system where you'd go pick up like your lovely McDonald's orders queues, which would certainly not work in this kind of situation. Well, thank you so much for giving me the time today.